3, 2. Hello. All right. Hi, and welcome to another episode of Diary from Migration. No, that was migration. Today, I'm going to be talking about the TSS requirements. The TSS is the Temporary Skills Shortage Visa, the subclass 482, or the rebranded 457, depending on where you're coming into the immigration piece. So what I want to do is firstly, I'm going to talk about the visa requirements, and then I'll talk about the nomination requirements. This video is really intended just as a basic checklist for you to be able to tick off those key documents and requirements to be able to apply for the TSS visa. So let's talk about the visa first. So the visa requirements are firstly that you have a valid passport, kind of goes without saying, is that you provide your English test results or you meet an English exemption. So an exemption might be that you have a passport from a English-speaking country, so the UK, US, Ireland, Australia, and New Zealand. Is that 5? I did it. Or you have been studying in the English language for a period of 5 years at secondary level or above. And what that doesn't mean is that you studied English as a language. It means that all of the schooling that you did, all of the classes that you were taught in, was taught in the English language. And that is evidenced by a letter from the institution that you studied at saying what your name is, the dates that you studied, and to confirm that the medium of instruction was English at the school that you're at. So that's English. The next thing you want to do is you need to not be related to the sponsoring organization. So back in the good old days, you could start a business and then sponsor yourself as the CEO, but not anymore. So if you are a relation or you are the person that you're looking to nominate, unfortunately, that's not something that would be allowed. The person that is being sponsored essentially shouldn't be a relation, so you can't kind of sponsor your family in on the TSS visa. The next requirement is that you want to be able to meet the health and character requirements. So the health requirement really is that you do a chest x-ray, that you do a blood test and a general medical check to make sure you're A-OK. One of the big things that they're looking out for is that the individual or you don't have tuberculosis. One of the big things they look for on most Australian visa applications. From a character perspective, what they're looking for is that you have very limited criminal history. If you do have an entry on your criminal history, it is best to provide as much detail as possible about that. If that does relate to a period of imprisonment, then I would highly recommend that you speak with a lawyer about how to present that information, but I won't get into that in too much detail right now. The other requirement that you might need to meet as a visa applicant or as the visa applicant would be that you need to meet the skills and experience requirement. So there is a minimum of 2 years of work experience in the nominated role on every TSS visa application, but separate to that, there is a skill requirement as dictated by the ANZSCO, essentially the dictionary of occupations that the government refers to. And that might mean that might say that you need to have at least 3 years of work experience or a diploma level qualification. It might say that you must have a bachelor occupation for something like an engineer or a surveyor. It also might say that you potentially, in lieu of that qualification or that bachelor, you can have 5 years experience. So applications across the board must have a minimum of 2 years work experience, but that might be that is just the bare minimum. Over and above that, there may be additional qualifications and experience that would need to be proven. The other consideration that you would have is your occupation or your passport country on the list for a mandatory skills assessment? So the mandatory skills assessment essentially covers off things like a welder, a fitter, a cook from certain countries. There is a legislative instrument that essentially details all of the countries and all of the skills assessments that are mandatory. One quick note about your English test results. There is different English test results required based on the occupation list that you are being nominated under. So worth a check to double check exactly what they are. The next part of the application is the nomination side of things. So this would be what a company needs to do for a TSS application. So the first thing is generally labour market testing. So there is a separate video around labour market testing on our YouTube channel. So you can go check that out to get your checklist and know exactly what you need to do. Your labour market testing must meet all the requirements as determined by the Department of Home Affairs, and it must run for 28 days out of the last 4 months. That's not 25 days, it's not 23 days. It must be the full 28-day period within the last 4 months prior to lodgement of the nomination. The next thing that a company needs to think about is a strong position description. So what you don't want to do is confuse the department or make it not clear as to exactly what the role is going to be doing. So if you have a detailed position description that essentially outlines the skills, experience, tasks and duties, responsibilities, reporting structure, all of those things that you would have in a normal position description, you really want to outline that to the department so it's very clear where the category is that your nominated occupation should be put in and why you've chosen that ANZSCO code. The next big thing is the Australian industry market rates. So essentially you must pay foreign workers in line with what the Australian market is saying that role gets paid. It doesn't matter that they're from another country. You must always pay in accordance with what the Australian market rate data says. Again, there is another video that refers to Australian market rate data and how to be able to prove that to the Australian government. The other couple of things that you want to consider is that, is there any caveats related to the occupation? So on the skilled occupation list, there are some caveats that will apply to certain nominated occupations. These things might be around the type of responsibilities that the individual has, might be around the location of the role, it might be the salary that's required. So for example, for something like a management accountant, the caveat is that the minimum salary is $90,000. So while you can nominate someone in that occupation, you must pay them at least $90,000 to be in that role. And the final thing to consider is that there must be no adverse information about the business or no adverse information that's going to affect that application. So that's a bit of a checklist on the TSS application. So on the visa side of things, what you want to look out for is English, health and character, a valid passport, anything to do with a mandatory skills assessment if required, and having English test results that meet the requirements. And then for the nomination, no adverse information, check those caveats, make sure the nominated occupation is clearly consistent with whatever ANZSCO says, your labour market testing has been done correctly and in line with what the government says labour market testing is, and you're paying against Australian market rate data. That is it for today's video. Thank you for watching Diary of a Migration Lawyer, and tune in for other episodes. Like, comment, subscribe. Bye. I feel like I keep going, bye. Thanks for watching Diary of a Migration Lawyer. If you would like some more hints, tips, tricks on how to do migration yourself or with a strategic partner like a migration lawyer, don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel, Diary of Migration Lawyer.